A billionaire was about to eat his dinner when a homeless girl suddenly shouted, "Don't eat that!" What he discovered moments later shocked everyone and changed both of their lives forever. The city never truly slept. Even as evening settled in, it pulsed with sound car, horns echoing between tall buildings, footsteps splashing through rain-soaked streets, distant voices blending into a restless hum. Neon lights flickered on wet sidewalks, reflecting off puddles like broken stars. Mr. Adrian Cole stepped out of his black luxury car without noticing any of it. He was used to moving through the world unseen, protected by wealth and power. His coat was perfectly pressed, his shoes spotless despite the rain. An assistant held an umbrella above his head, shielding him from even a single drop, as if the weather itself should respect his status. Another meeting completed. Another deal won. Yet his stomach reminded him of something far more basic: hunger. Nearby, a street vendor quickly handed over a boxed meal. Adrian barely glanced at it. He didn't like street food, but tonight, he was too tired to care. Standing beneath a glowing street lamp, rain tapping softly against the umbrella, he opened the container. Steam rose gently. He lifted his fork. "Don't eat that." The voice cut through the noise of the city, sharp, urgent, impossible to ignore. Adrian froze slowly. He turned. A small girl stood a few steps away near a damp brick wall. She was thin, her clothes worn and oversized, her shoes torn at the edges. Rain had soaked her hair, and her hands trembled slightly, not from cold alone, but from fear. People walked past her without slowing down. They always did, but she was looking directly at him. "What did you say?" Adrian asked, irritation creeping into his voice. "I said don't eat it," she repeated, quieter now but firm. "It's bad." Adrian frowned. He wasn't used to being warned, especially not by a homeless child. "And how would you know that?" he asked. "I saw it earlier," she replied, glancing toward the empty vendor cart down the street. It was sitting in the sun all day. Flies were on it. Adrian looked back at the food. It looked fine. It smelled normal. Every instinct told him to ignore her. Yet something held him still. It wasn't fear. It wasn't doubt. It was the look in her eyes. Not greedy, not hopeful, but deeply concerned. "For what reason?" Adrian asked. "Why, tell me." She shook her head. "No reason." That answer unsettled him more than the warning itself. Rain fell harder now. The city rushed around them, uncaring and endless. Adrian felt foolish standing there, listening to a girl the world had taught him not to see. Still, he lowered his fork. After a long pause, he closed the box, walked to a nearby trash bin, and dropped the food inside. The girl let out a quiet breath of relief. "Thank you for listening," she said. Adrian turned back to her, confused. "You're thanking me." She nodded. "Most people don't." And in that moment, beneath the rain and streetlight glow, Adrian Cole realized something had already changed, because that warning spoken by a child with nothing had just saved his life, and this was only the beginning. The cafe stood on the corner of the street, like a quiet shelter from the rain. Its windows glowed warm yellow, fogged slightly from the heat inside. To Adrian, it was just another place he had passed hundreds of times without noticing. To Lena, it looked like another world. She stopped just outside the door. "You don't have to," she said quickly, her voice low. "I'm fine." Adrian turned to her. Up close, he could see how tired she was. Not just hungry, but worn down by days that demanded more strength than a child should have. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." Those words felt strange in his mouth. He wasn't used to wanting things that had nothing to do with profit or control. Lena hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The smell of fresh bread and hot soup wrapped around them instantly. The sound of rain softened, replaced by gentle music and the low murmur of conversations. A few people glanced at Lena's wet clothes and then looked away, pretending not to notice. Adrian noticed everything. He chose a small table near the window. No assistants, no phone calls, just two chairs and a quiet space between them. The waiter approached, clearly surprised by the pairing. Adrian ordered 2 full meals without asking Lena what she wanted, then corrected himself. "What would you like?" he asked. Lena blinked, startled. No one had asked her that in a long time. "Anything warm," she said softly. When the waiter left, silence settled between them. Lena folded her hands in her lap, sitting very straight, as if afraid to touch anything. Adrian loosened his coat and placed it over the back of her chair. "You're shaking," he said. She shook her head. "I'm okay." He didn't argue. The food arrived slowly, steam rising from the plates. Lena stared at her meal, eyes wide. Soup, bread, rice, vegetables. More food than she had seen at once in weeks. Adrian gently slid the plate closer to her. "Eat," he said. She didn't move. What's wrong? He asked. I'm just making sure it's real, she whispered. Something in Adrian's chest cracked open. It's real, he said. No one's taking it away. She picked up the spoon with careful hands and took a small sip. Her eyes closed briefly, then another spoonful, and another. Each bite seemed to warm her from the inside out. Adrian watched quietly. He didn't rush her. He didn't check his phone. For the first time in years, he was fully present. You didn't ask me for money, he said after a while. Lena shrugged. Money goes fast. And food? He asked. Food helps now. That answer felt wiser than anything he had heard in boardrooms. As she ate, Lena slowly began to talk. Not all at once, just pieces like broken puzzle parts. She told him about her grandmother, who couldn't walk far anymore. About sleeping near the old train station where it was a little warmer. About how she learned which streets were kinder and which ones were dangerous. I watch people, Lena said. You can tell who might help and who won't. And what did you see when you looked at me? Adrian asked. She smiled faintly. You looked lonely. The word hit him harder than hunger ever could. Adrian swallowed. I suppose I am. Lena nodded, as if that made sense. He ate slowly now, tasting his food instead of rushing through it. He realized how often he had eaten expensive meals without feeling anything at all. When Lena finished, she wiped her mouth carefully and pushed the plate back, satisfied but still polite. Thank you, she said. I won't forget this. You don't have to, Adrian replied. But I will, she insisted. Kind things should be remembered. Adrian leaned back, studying her. You said you live with your grandmother. Where are your parents? Lena's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. My father left. My mother. She paused. She got sick. Adrian waited. She ate bad food once, Lena continued quietly. We didn't know. She said it tasted strange, but she didn't want to waste it. A few days later, she couldn't stand. Then she couldn't breathe. Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes glistened. That's why you warned me, Adrian said softly. She nodded. I don't want anyone else to die like that, even strangers. Adrian felt a deep, quiet shame. He had almost ignored her. He had almost walked away. You're very brave, he said. Lena shook her head. I'm just careful. The rain outside slowed, turning into a gentle drizzle. People came and went, but their table felt untouched by time. Adrian paid the bill and stood. Lena followed, reaching for her coat. Wait, he said, placing something on the table. She stiffened when she saw the money. I don't beg, she said quickly. I know, Adrian replied. This isn't begging. It's help. She looked uncertain. You can say no, he added. After a long moment, Lena took only a small part of the money, leaving the rest behind. This is enough, she said. My grandma needs medicine. Adrian nodded, respecting her choice. Outside, the air felt cleaner. The streetlights reflected softly on wet pavement. Lena turned to leave. Will I see you again? Adrian asked. She smiled. A real smile this time. Maybe. Kind people always cross paths again. As she disappeared into the crowd, Adrian stood alone, feeling fuller than he had in years. That night, for the first time in a very long time, he didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt human, and it was all because he had shared a meal with someone who had taught him what hunger truly meant. The night air felt heavier after Lena disappeared into the crowd. Adrian stood under the streetlight for a long moment, the city rushing past him as if nothing important had happened. Yet inside him, something had shifted. The simple meal, the quiet conversation, and Lena's calm courage refused to leave his thoughts. As his car pulled away, Adrian leaned back in the seat, staring out the window. The reflection staring back at him looked older than he remembered. Tired eyes, a face shaped by success, but lacking warmth. He loosened his tie and closed his eyes, but Lena's words echoed in his mind. She ate bad food once. I don't want anyone else to die like that. At home, Adrian barely slept. Memories surfaced, meetings he had rushed through, warnings he had ignored, people he had dismissed because they seemed insignificant. By morning, the unease had turned into resolve. He called his assistant, Marcus. I want you to look into something, Adrian said, quietly. Marcus listened carefully as Adrian explained about the street vendor and Lena's warning. You think it was dangerous? Marcus asked. I know it was, Adrian replied. Find out how widespread it is. By noon, Adrian was in his office, glass walls overlooking the city he had helped shape. For years, he had seen it as a collection of opportunities. Now, he saw something else. People moving through systems that could either protect or harm them. That afternoon, Marcus returned with a serious expression. It's worse than we thought, he said, laying out reports, photos, and documents. Adrian read in silence. Expired food was being repackaged, reheated, and sold cheaply across several districts. Vendors were pressured by suppliers who cut costs without concern for safety. Complaints had been filed. Inspections had been delayed. Bribes had smoothed the way. Several hospital visits had already been linked to food poisoning. One case, buried in paperwork, matched Lena's story almost exactly. A woman, a mother gone too soon. Adrian closed the file slowly. All of this, he said, and a child on the street was the only one brave enough to warn me. Marcus nodded. Most people wouldn't risk angering a stranger. Adrian leaned back, anger and shame mixing in his chest. She saved my life. That realization struck him fully now. He imagined himself taking that first bite. A delayed illness, a hospital bed, headlines twisted into rumors. His money could have paid for treatment, but not everyone was that lucky. Lena's mother hadn't been. The next day, Adrian walked the same streets again, but this time without his car, without his assistants, dressed simply. He blended into the crowd. He watched vendors, noticed how food was stored, how quickly people bought and ate without questioning. He saw Lena again, sitting near the old train station, carefully dividing a small piece of bread in half. "Lena," he said gently. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "You came back." "Yes," he said. "I wanted to tell you something." They sat on the steps together, the noise of passing trains rumbling in the background. "You were right," Adrian said. "About the food." She nodded, unsurprised. "I know. Because of your warning," he continued. "A lot of people will be safer now." She tilted her head. "Really?" "Yes. Inspections are starting today. The bad suppliers will be stopped." Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "I wish it had happened sooner." Adrian felt the weight of those words. "So do I." He hesitated before asking, "Your mother? How long ago?" 3 years, Lena said. "I still remember the day she told me not to worry." Adrian said nothing. There were no words that could make that pain smaller. Later that week, the story began to spread. Authorities moved quickly, pressured by evidence and public concern. Vendors were questioned. Operations shut down. New safety standards enforced. But Adrian didn't stop there. He funded free health checkups in the affected neighborhoods. He supported safe food programs run by local families. He made sure the changes weren't temporary gestures, but lasting ones. When reporters asked why he cared so deeply, Adrian surprised even himself. "Because someone with nothing showed me what responsibility really means," he said. Lena watched the news from a borrowed television at a shelter. She didn't recognize the word billionaire as something important. She only recognized the man who had listened. A few days later, Adrian returned to the train station with a small bag. Inside were notebooks, pencils, and a simple book on science. "For you," he said. Lena's eyes widened. "Why, because you ask questions," Adrian replied. "And because the world needs people who notice danger and speak up." She held the book, like it was fragile treasure. "I didn't do anything special," she said. Adrian smiled gently. "You did the hardest thing of all, you cared." As the sun set behind the city skyline, Adrian realized something profound. Kindness didn't always look like grand gestures or public charity. Sometimes it looked like a hungry child standing in the rain, choosing to protect a stranger instead of herself. And sometimes, the greatest truth was hidden in the smallest voice, waiting for someone powerful enough and humble enough to listen. That was the truth Lena had revealed, and it changed everything. Morning arrived gently over the city, but Adrian Cole had already been awake for hours. The view from his penthouse windows stretched wide steel towers, crowded streets, moving lives, but for once, it didn't feel distant. It felt personal. On the table before him lay a single note he had written late into the night. "Find Lena. Help her grandmother. Do it right, not as charity, not as publicity, but as respect." Adrian insisted on going himself. When he reached the old train station, the air smelled of rust, oil, and damp concrete. Pigeons scattered as commuters hurried past. Near a sheltered corner, he saw Lena kneeling beside an elderly woman wrapped in thin blankets, her grandmother. She was smaller than Adrian expected, her face lined deeply, her breathing shallow. Lena looked up first, surprised, but not afraid. "You came back again," Lena said. "I promised myself I would," Adrian replied. The grandmother tried to sit up. "Lena, who is this?" "This is Adrian," Lena said. "He listens." That simple sentence humbled him more than any title ever had. Adrian crouched down to the grandmother's level. "Ma'am, I'm honored to meet you." She studied him carefully, then smiled faintly. "You're the one who fed my girl." "Yes," he said. "She fed me too, in a different way." A doctor arrived shortly after, quiet, kind, unmarked by uniforms. Adrian had arranged it without announcing anything. The doctor examined the grandmother carefully, speaking softly, explaining each step so Lena could understand. She needs proper medication, the doctor said, and warmth. Most of all, rest. Lena's shoulders dropped, fear easing just a little. Adrian nodded. She'll have it. That same day, Lena and her grandmother were moved into a small but clean apartment, not far from the station. It wasn't luxurious, but it was safe. There were windows, a real bed, a kitchen with food that hadn't been scavenged. Lena walked through each room slowly, touching the walls as if they might disappear. Is this really ours? She asked. Yes, Adrian replied. As long as you need it. Her grandmother sat on the bed, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. I prayed, she whispered. I didn't expect an answer like this. Adrian said nothing. He simply bowed his head. But kindness, he soon learned, didn't end with shelter. He visited often, not to check on them, but to listen. He learned how the grandmother once worked as a seamstress, how Lena's mother loved reading aloud, how the streets had taught Lena to be alert, cautious, and brave. One afternoon, Lena asked a question that stopped him. Why are you helping us so much? She asked. Adrian thought carefully before answering. Because you reminded me that helping shouldn't wait for permission. The city began to feel the change too. Adrian used his influence not to command, but to open doors. Safe food stalls replaced the dangerous ones. Local vendors were trained and supported instead of punished and abandoned. Community kitchens opened at night for people who had nowhere else to go. People noticed. Not the billionaire, but the shift reporters came eventually. They always did. Mr. Cole, one asked. What inspired this sudden focus on community welfare? Adrian looked straight into the camera. A child who had every reason to stay silent chose to speak. If she could do that with nothing, then I have no excuse with everything. The story spread, but Adrian made sure Lena's name was never used. She didn't need to be a symbol. She needed to be a child. Weeks passed. Lena started school again. On her first day, she stood at the door, backpack tight against her shoulders, unsure. What if I don't fit in? She asked. Adrian knelt to her level. You already do. You just forgot. She smiled nervously and stepped inside. Her grandmother grew stronger with each day. She began sewing again, small pieces at first, then blankets for neighbors, then clothes for children in the building. Purpose returned to her hands. One evening, Lena handed Adrian a small folded piece of paper. Inside was a drawing. It showed a man and a girl standing under a streetlight. Above them were simple words, written carefully. Kindness comes back. Adrian swallowed hard. I don't deserve this, he said. Lena shook her head. Kindness isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. That night, Adrian stood alone on his balcony, watching the city lights glow like stars fallen to earth. He realized that kindness didn't shrink when shared. It expanded. It moved outward, touching people he would never meet. And it all traced back to one small warning, one brave child, one choice to listen. For the first time in his life, Adrian understood that true power wasn't the ability to change systems. It was the willingness to be changed first. Kindness had returned to him, multiplied, and it was only the beginning. The community center stood where an abandoned warehouse once decayed, its walls cracked, windows broken, forgotten by the city. Now, warm lights glowed through wide glass panels, and laughter spilled into the evening air. A simple banner hung above the entrance. Listening changes lives. Inside, rows of chairs filled slowly. Families, workers, elders, and children took their seats, murmuring softly. A small stage waited at the front, decorated with paper stars made by students. Cameras were set carefully along the walls, quiet and respectful. This was not a spectacle. It was a story. Adrian Cole stood near the back, unnoticed, dressed plainly. No one recognized the billionaire who had helped fund the center. That was exactly how he wanted it. He wasn't there to be seen. He was there to witness. The documentary crew adjusted their equipment as a teacher gently guided a group of children backstage. Among them was Lena. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair neatly tied back. She no longer looked like the girl who had stood shivering in the rain, but Adrian could still see her strength. The same steady eyes, the same quiet awareness. Lena held a folded paper in her hands, breathing slowly. You ready? The teacher asked. Lena nodded, though her hands trembled. From his place in the back, Adrian felt his own heart tighten. He remembered the first time he had stood before a crowd, confident, certain, protected by wealth. Lena stood before them with nothing but truth. The lights dimmed. A soft voice introduced the segment. A story about how small acts of courage could ripple outward in ways no one expected. Lena stepped onto the stage. For a moment she said nothing. The room fell silent. Even the cameras seemed to wait. "My name is Lena," she began, her voice soft but clear. "I want to tell you about a day that changed my life." Images played behind her, rainy streets, blurred city lights, shadows, moving past one small figure. "I was hungry that day," she continued, "but I was more afraid that someone else would get hurt." She told the story simply. No drama, no exaggeration, just truth. How she had seen the food, sitting too long. How she remembered her mother. How she chose to speak up, even when she thought no one would listen. "I didn't know he was rich," Lena said gently. "I just knew he was human." A quiet murmur moved through the audience. Lena looked down for a moment, then lifted her eyes again. After that, something strange happened. People started listening, not just to me, but to each other. The screen behind her showed images of new food stalls, clean kitchens, community meals. Children studying together, elders laughing. "My grandma is healthy now," Lena said, smiling. "She sews again. I go to school. I want to become a food safety inspector one day." Soft laughter and applause followed. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. He had funded buildings, companies, entire industries, but nothing had ever moved him like this. Lena took a breath. "I learned something important," she said. "Kindness doesn't ask who you are. It only asks if you care." Silence followed. Then the room rose in a slow, powerful standing ovation. Adrian didn't clap at first. His hands trembled. He felt tears blur his vision, something he hadn't allowed himself in years. When the applause faded, the documentary narrator spoke softly. "Kindness is not loud, it does not demand attention. But when it is seen, it echoes." After the event, people lingered, talking quietly, sharing stories of their own small moments. Warnings given, help offered, words spoken when silence would have been easier. Lena stepped down from the stage and spotted Adrian in the back. She smiled and walked over. "You stayed hidden," she said. "I wanted to hear the story like everyone else," he replied. She nodded. "Stories are better when they're shared." They stood together near the doorway as people passed by, some thanking Lena, others simply smiling. "Do you know what shocked everyone the most?" Adrian asked. "What?" Lena said. "That a warning could be an act of love." Lena thought for a moment. Love is just paying attention. Outside, the night was calm. No rain. The city lights reflected softly on clean streets. Adrian watched Lena walk toward her grandmother, who waited proudly near the entrance. The two embraced, safe, whole. In that moment, Adrian understood the full truth of his transformation. He had once believed kindness was something you gave away. Now he knew it was something you passed on. The documentary ended not with headlines or titles, but with Lena's voice echoing gently over the final frame. "If you see something wrong, speak. If you see someone hurting, care. You never know whose life you might change." The screen faded to black, and somewhere in the city, countless small acts of kindness began, quietly, bravely, because one child had dared to say, "Don't eat that," and one man had chosen to listen. If this story touched your heart, if Lena's small warning made you pause and think, then don't just watch this video and move on. Like this video, because kindness deserves to be seen. Share it. Your share could reach someone who needs hope today. Comment below. Tell us, what would you have done in Lena's place? And most importantly, subscribe to our channel. Because this isn't just a story, it's a reminder that one small act of courage, one moment of care, can change an entire life. Today it was Lena. Tomorrow, it could be you. Don't scroll past humanity. Choose kindness. Choose to care.